Welcome to HortTube, where we talk all things gardening. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is a Mountain Fire Pieris. This is a Mountain Fire Pieris, a beautiful white spring flowering evergreen shrub that then gets red foliage throughout the growing season. Over a long period of time, Mountain Fire Pieris can end up quite large. This thing can get 10 feet tall and perhaps 8 feet in width, but it's pretty easy to keep this plant in the 6 by 6 range. Mountain Fire Pieris is extremely cold hardy. This plant can grow up to zone 5 and then down to zone 8, and it's probably hardier in the cooler regions, honestly, than the hotter areas of the country. Although Mountain Fire will end up quite large, it's not particularly fast growing. I don't think you'll get much more than 6 to 8 inches of growth out of these in a single season. Mountain Fire Pieris is a plant that probably would take almost full sun in zones 5 and 6 and maybe even up to 4B. As you get further and further south, though, this definitely becomes a shade-loving shrub. Not deep shade, but part shade in zone 7 or 8. Mountain Fire would not make a great foundation plant unless you were putting it on the corner of a foundation. Probably would you want to use Temple Bells or one of the smaller growing Pieris if you wanted these as a foundation plant, because this one will typically outgrow most foundations unless you have a wall that has no windows or something like that. Primarily, this one's going to be used out on the edge of your property. You know, maybe in the corner of a fence or something like that. It would look fantastic in that area with the white flowers and the red new foliage. The main features of Mountain Fire Pieris are, number one, it's evergreen, and there's not a lot of evergreen leafy shrubs that grow in the cold areas that this plant will grow in. Number two, you get these incredible bell-shaped flowers in the early spring, and then that's followed by this amazing new red foliage. I picked this plant. The plant's a little small, but it has flowers and it had some of the new red growth on it after the flowers are done, which some of these have already finished here. When they're done, it'll be replaced and be red for most of the spring and early summer until it gets very hot. I've included videos in the description of this video for planting woody shrubs. Pieris definitely falls into the category of needs well-drained soil. You definitely want to mound this plant up some. It's best to mix in some pine bark soil conditioner or something chunky with the existing soil to make sure it's well drained, and definitely don't over mulch this plant. This is a plant that you can easily love to death. For the first 6 months to a year after you plant your Pieris, you'll want to keep a close eye on the watering, but let it dry out before you water it. When it needs water, drown the space around it and really water it well, but make sure it actually needs it before you come back and do it again, because you could definitely do damage that way. Once this plant is established, I consider them reasonably drought tolerant, and I said this in another Pieris video. These are very good at letting you know they're dry. The new growth on them will typically wilt. Pieris is a plant I've noticed in the nursery that almost responds too well to fertilizer, so don't fertilize this plant too early in the spring. I would wait until near your frost-free date, and then I definitely would fertilize it. The new growth on this plant's fantastic. It's typically after the flowers have come on it, and you'll get a lot more of that rich red growth during the growing season by fertilizing them, but just wait a little longer than you do some other things. The best time to prune Pieris is after the flowers come on it, but before the new growth comes out. If you're in zone 7 or 8, I'd put this plant where you can just allow it to get to its full height. If it gets a crazy limb on it, cut it off. If you're in the cooler areas where this plant can grow, you can probably treat it a little more like you treat other shrubs and give it a haircut when you need to. We really don't see chewing insects on Pieris. This is not a plant that we really have to spray for any insects on. Our main issue on this plant is definitely not overwatering it and making sure it's in a well-drained space and not over-mulched, because root rot is definitely the #1 killer. Pieris are considered deer resistant, although I have had a Mountain Fire Pieris chewed on by a deer in the past. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the beautiful white flowering, red foliaged Mountain Fire Pieris. Thank you for watching my video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also, comment below with any questions you have about Pieris. Thanks for watching.